Hello everyone, my name's Anna and I'm from Forefront Events and we should be live with you all now. So thank you to everyone that's logging in and joining us and welcome to this virtual panel exploring the new era of hybrid work. So we've received a really great response to this event. We've got over 120 senior workplace leaders registered to watch live, which is really great news. So welcome to everyone. I can see you all jumping on and joining in. So just before I hand you over to our expert panel, I just wanted to highlight that we are trying to make this discussion as interactive as possible. So you'll notice to the screen on your right that we have a questions tab and polls tab. So you're able to send in your questions, upvote questions and answer live polls as we go. So please get involved as this really does add to the conversation and we will be feeding it back to the panel as we go. So I'm just about to hand you over to our moderator, but first I'd like to introduce our panel. So we've got Andrew Todd, who's the Chief Technology Officer at Iress. We've got Graeme, Scannell, who's Head of Workplace Experience at MYOB. And we also have Paula, Skidmore, Workplace Transformation Lead at BHP. Her connection's just dropped out, but I'll just get her to jump back on in a second, so she'll be with us in just a moment. So the panel today is moderated by Jason MacBride from Poly. And Jason, I'm just going to pass over to you and I'll let you take it away.
Wonderful. Thank you, Anna. And thank you for putting this virtual panel together. We are delighted to be here. Good morning to everyone, and thank you for making the time to join us at the round table to discuss the new era of hybrid work. The pandemic has changed the way we work and has forced millions of employees around the world to work from home. It has brought challenges around maintaining company culture and supporting home workers. That's why we're here today. Number one, to learn from industry peers on how they're responding to the crisis. And number two, to help gain some insight on how to redesign your business and reinvent the way people work. One of the hardest hit industries has been aviation. And if you would have told me 12 months ago that travel was going to come to a standstill, I would not have believed you. International passenger numbers in Australia have dropped by 98% from June this year to June last year. The demand for people to remain productive, continue collaborating, and most importantly, stay connected with each other has become more critical. It is no surprise that the number of these online conferences and events, along with virtual meetings taking place, has exploded. Platforms such as Microsoft Teams, Zoom, and others have seen an incredible uplift around the number of meetings held each day and the average number of minutes per meeting increasing. I'm sure you're all aware of the new home working scenario and some of the challenges that presents, particularly as it was forced upon us so abruptly. And for those in Victoria and most recently New Zealand, our friends and colleagues have been further restrictions placed upon them and it's extended. We understand the pain, we have been there, and we're thinking of you through this process. We'll dive deeper into these challenges throughout the session. I'm proud and excited to have our industry veterans here sharing their viewpoints today. Let's make this as interactive as possible, as Anna said, and please send through questions throughout the session. Please also keep an eye out for the poll questions as they'll be popping up as well. I'd like to briefly introduce myself and give a short overview on Poly before handing over to the panel to introduce themselves. My name is Jason MacBride, and I'm the sales manager at Poly for Australia and New Zealand. Over the past 20 years, I've worked with several fantastic IT vendor and IT system integration companies. And my goal over that time has remained consistent. Help customers increase productivity by leveraging the right technology to deliver the best end user outcome. It's all about experience. Poly, formerly known as Plantronics and Polycom, is a global communication company that empowers meaningful human connection and collaboration. At Poly, we believe work isn't a place, it's what you do. I'd like to share just a brief story around our heritage. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the names Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin. In 1969, they were the astronauts to first step on the moon. Those famous words spoken, one tall step for man, one giant leap for mankind, were transmitted over a Plantronics headset. Polycom is synonymous with the audio conference Starphone. It still surprises me today to see how many units of these, I won't say aged, let's call them mature, are still in production right now. They just seem to keep going. As one company, now known as Poly, we combined legendary audio experience, powerful video, and conferencing capabilities to overcome the distractions, complexity, and distance that make communication in and out of the workplace so challenging. Now, let me hand over to our panelists and introduce themselves. I believe alphabetically seems the fairest. Andrew, Graeme, and Paula. Over to you, Andrew.
Thank you. My name's Andrew Todd. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Iress. At Iress, we build software and deliver services around data and technology into financial institutions. We are a global business, so we have offices in numerous countries around the world, all the way from South Africa, Canada, France, Tunisia, of course, Australia and New Zealand. So a global business with lots of offices in each of those areas. So I'm responsible for all of technology globally, and that includes our workplace technology function. And so definitely it's been an interesting time for us over the past 6 months, especially.
I look forward to hearing more. Thank you, Andrew. And Graeme, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks. So I'm Graeme Scannell. I am the head of workplace experience at MYOB. MYOB is a SaaS company, and we do products such as accounting software and other products, primarily in the SME space, the accountant space, etc. My work experience sadly extends for more than 20 years. I've worked and lived in the UK, in South Africa, across the Middle East and China, and now Australia for the last few years. Don't worry, Paula, I was treading water while you were getting back on.
Sorry, guys. I think we're sorted now.
Yeah, my entire career has been in workplace. It's my passion. It's what I do.
Wonderful. Thank you, Graeme. And Paula, welcome back. Would you like to say hello?
I think I'll say something quickly before I get kicked out again. We've got 2 kids here doing online schooling, and a partner who's working online, so it is a big draw on the bandwidth. So I work for BHP, and my role is workplace strategy and transformation. So I have a team of people who look at how we do new ways of working across the organisation and how we design workspaces to support that effectively. So yeah, this is clearly something which is front and centre at the moment. Do we move to more of a hybrid model? What does our workplace look like moving forward? So yeah, I'm also interested to hear what the other panelists have to say on this stuff as well. So look forward to a good session.
Fantastic. Thank you, Paula. Thank you again all for joining today. And today we'll be discussing 3 key areas. The first is your approach to workspace and technology in response to the pandemic. Secondly, we'll look at the work practices. And third, we'll look at work culture. So let's start with technology. And for the panel, are there any workplace design and technology considerations that you're thinking about or currently making to boost productivity in response to COVID? Perhaps we can start with Graeme.
Well, we're kind of in the learning phase with regards to COVID. We are very much a tech business, so our infrastructure and platform is very tech heavy at the moment. So we pre-COVID we had the ability to put all of our staff working from home if they chose to work there. We have exceptionally integrated workplaces across ANZ, so our starting point was very positive. So if you talk about initiatives, we're kind of holding firm on that, but we are fully integrated. What I would say is behaviors within using those tools has changed a bit. And as you say, that was enforced on us by us all working from home. So what we've seen the benefits of the structure of in the tech platform is how we communicate, how we engage, where we engage with people, because now suddenly we're sitting inside people's lounges instead of sitting inside a meeting room. Some of the positives I've seen is relative to at work, when we look at working from home, is the fact that everybody's had the equal share of voice. Historically, if you had 5 people in a room and 2 people dialing in, the 5 people in a room had the lion's share of the communication, if not 90-95%, whereas now everybody has the equal opportunity to partake. I think another habit that is not new, but it's definitely been enhanced, which is positive from a tech point of view, is that idea that was lost when people are in meetings. When somebody's sitting in a meeting and says, I'm going to bring this up, I'm going to bring this up, and by the time they get a break in a conversation, they forgot what they were going to say because the conversation's moved on. Whereas the introduction of just dropping a note into the channel whilst people are talking prompts that memory, so you don't lose that innovation. So I do think there's been positive movements in capturing people's thoughts more holistically with our movement to working from home, and I think that somehow needs to be transferred back when we get back to the office.
Thanks, Graeme. That's really good insight. I haven't thought about having an equal playing field for everybody working from home before, so that's a good perception. Paula, what about yourself? What is your business doing in regards to returning to work, and any tips you can share with the audience?
Yeah, I mean, I'd just echo what Graeme said there. You know, we're kind of spending a little bit of time now trying to understand what people want, you know, and whether the perception of what they want is actually what we're seeing people do when they do return to the office. We've got a global portfolio and we've got buildings that are open. So our KL office is open, our Perth office is open, our Adelaide office is open. We've got critical roles still in existence in some of the other offices as well. So and what we're seeing is that people that are coming back to the office, they're coming back at the moment because they want to get away from their home environment, and they're coming back still to kind of do that individual work. However, what people have said they want to do is come back for that more social productivity stuff around, you know, that face-to-face interaction that you miss so much. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out in time. I mean, obviously the offices at the moment, we've spent a lot of energy and focus on making sure that we've got a safe environment for people to operate within. Those roles that are critical, that do have to come in, have got the right controls and measures in place. And much like Graeme as well, you know, we were really well placed. We've spent over the last couple of years transitioning about 80% of our workforce to a more flexible, dynamic way of working with activity-based environments and things like that. And so people were really well placed. They had the right technology. They had a suite of tools that they could use. And again, like Graeme, we've also seen the benefits around this kind of inclusive kind of position that and context that we all find ourselves in. So definitely some of our more geographically dispersed teams have kind of reflected that actually we all feel more as one team now. We're all sat around our virtual kitchen table, as opposed to everybody being in the office and then a few people kind of taking the lion's share of the hard time zone impact and being at home in the evening. So yeah, it's an interesting place. But I think as we start to think about returning to work, I think we want to make sure that we don't bite a bullet that's regretful. You know, we might need to make sure we make good quality decisions based on data, and based on what people are saying that they need. But also, I think it's shifting a little bit now from kind of individual choice to actually be more planned about how we deliver work as a team, as an organisation. So you can have people working from home remotely, but also being more deliberate about coming together for that social productivity. And therefore, those of us that kind of have that design piece in our roles will be starting to think, well, does that significantly augment the spaces that you need to provide within the office environment if that is a massive shift around why people are coming back in? So yeah, like seeking to understand and kind of seeing what the next kind of 6 to 8 months will bring.
Thanks, Paula. Yeah, some good considerations you've raised. It's interesting that from a couple of studies that I've seen, it's about 85% of businesses believe that greater location flexibility has led to increase in productivity. And in terms of acquiring the right talent, the physical location becomes less important when you've got that ability to work from home. So that attracting talent, that retaining talent, and giving the your staff the ability to work from where they want, when they want, is a real changer. And I think that this pandemic has really catapulted the way that we are going to allow employees to work. So yeah, some good thought there. I'll just quickly turn to one of the questions. So Bill raised, in the office, we have a consistent, stable internet connection. The same isn't true for people working remotely. Thank you, Paula. We've seen that this morning, which is actually why I'm in the office this morning, because I was on a call yesterday from home and my ADSL2 connection is terrible. And I dropped out on that call and I'm like, that cannot happen. So I came into the office and I'm in Sydney, so it's okay. So for businesses going more virtual, will you be investing money in upgrading home connectivity for staff? I might open that up to you guys to get your thoughts before I give mine.
I'll just jump in on this one. We're not. At least definitely not at this point. It was something that was raised by people when the work from home full-time really started. Our view is that as an organisation, we support flexibility, and we'd actually been through a process over the last few years to redesign our office workspaces to be more flexible in how people can collaborate together. We have a view that our people work better when they're together. And of course, this situation has really, raised that question. And what does that mean for people? So we still believe in that. There are different ways to achieve working together, and so our surveys that we run when we're engaging with our people get feedback quite similar, that where people want to go back in the office, but probably more at their terms. And so I sense that there will be still a shift of people coming in quite regularly, and so then the investment to upgrade thousands of people's internet connections globally, you'd have to do it for all people in our organisation because everyone's equal. Then that just wouldn't be probably the right commercial decision, and again maybe regretful over the long term. So for us, not right now.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. Paula, Graeme, your thoughts?
Yeah, I might just jump in and kind of take the question slightly off in a slightly different way, if that's okay. Because for me, it's not just about the stable internet connection that provides productivity. You know, you've got mobile phones, we can hotspot. There's things you can do to kind of navigate that. I think, and I think if people are working from home, to do that kind of focused individual piece of work rather than doing the connection, you can kind of navigate internet connection or poor internet connection to some degree. I think there's also a piece around kind of care and well-being for staff, though. There are people working in certain parts of the world that living in shared houses and have been operating out of their bedrooms with, no proper setup. They're living and working in the same space. From a mental health perspective, that obviously has a huge impact and a huge drain. And I suppose one of the things that we want to make sure is when we look at world-class or best-in-class working from home conditions, the care for people has to kind of come into that. It can't only be about people's productivity in terms of, what they're producing. It must also consider long-term well-being, long-term engagement with the organisation and things like that. So I think there's a whole raft of things that will probably add some constraint around how frequently we allow, in inverted commas, our people to work from home in certain environments where they just don't have the best support for them to be effective for themselves as well as the organisation.
Thanks, Paul.
Yeah, I totally align with that. It was both for the speakers. That I think what we're learning is what we will be learning very soon is the value of the data. But the data we've got today is a very short period of time, and there is obviously the health and the ergonomics and the requirements that a company is responsible for to enable and ensure people are working in a healthy environment and an ergonomically sound environment, but they haven't necessarily got that full influence to the end from an end-to-end connectivity. So a lot of it is guideline driven, a lot of it is intentional, and a lot of it is around behaviors, training, and supporting people to get the best results, because you haven't got as much control as you have in a workplace. But I think that data piece is going to become key. because this was forced on us and we didn't have time to prepare. When we look at in the reference to productivity in this whole piece, it's kind of, well, what is productivity? Are we seeing the real productivity of working from home, or are we seeing that we're all in this together, we're all fighting the same thing, so we've moved into this very productive mindset, so we are seeing rather a spike of productivity, not necessarily a long-term understanding of how this new normal is going to affect that productivity. And I think I've mentioned this to you before, Jason, around this idea that every survey we've done, people say, oh no, I'm working from home 3-4 days a week, 5 days a week. Whereas every meeting I've had in the last month starts with, oh, I can't wait, this is over, I just want to get out of my house. So there is a disconnect between this what we think versus what we feel. And I think those two things have to come together, and they won't come together when we're in an emotionally enhanced state. We have to kind of get a new normal, understand that what that data set's going to tell us, and that will influence where we go in the future. I do think, to Paula's point as well, that reference to productivity around the mode of work, what are you doing and where's the best place to do that productively, that's going to become much more important. So we've gone through this evolution of workplace towards the activity-based. Now suddenly the activity-based is really working around the holistic human, right? It involves their home, it involves their office, it involves their commute. So now we have the opportunity of actually getting true data, true impact. But I do think there's a huge piece around responsibility, accountability, and education of the employer to enable that employee to make those informed decisions.
Yeah, well said, Graeme. It's funny, from that question from Bill, I've seen a number of my team internally that have upgraded their home internet connections on their own back. It's not company sponsored, but just because of, NBN being available in their system or in their area, or that ability to upgrade to a larger package. Quite a few people that have taken that opportunity on board. And then also I've worked with a few of my friends. Their companies have provided an allowance, like a one-off, here, let's help you get your home office kind of upgraded. Do you need a monitor? Did you need a stand-up, ergonomic desk? Did you need an actual office chair, for example? And so, to Paula's point, everyone's in a different position in terms of their working environment, and what the importance of what one person puts on something versus someone else. It's very difficult to apply a one-size-fits-all. But these are, really interesting topics, and kind of segues really nicely into our second key area for today, which is workplace practices. And employees' health and well-being is becoming such a greater concern. We're spending more time looking at the attention around meeting fatigue, around physical fitness, around mental stability. And it's become far more prevalent since the COVID-19 pandemic has hit. I think, these things that we've just spoke about are some of the considerations, but there's quite a few more. Andrew, what's your approach, or any tips to supporting your team?
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge. Personally, I find it really difficult to manage my time. Work in the daytime in Australia, and then on Zoom calls to the UK and South Africa in the evenings, and it's quite easy to sit at a desk for hours on Zoom. So we have taken a few steps. We have seen people haven't been taking as much personal leave as they might normally take, and I think perhaps they've been waiting for everything to loosen up, and so you can go and have a holiday and go somewhere outside of your own house or your suburb. And now that's not happening. So we're encouraging people, especially with large leave balances, to take leave off between now and the end of the year, and actually towards the end of the year, around Christmas time, a big push to give people a break and headspace. So really focusing on people's leave from a just take time off perspective, even if you're at home, just don't get on the computer. Another challenge that we see is to get hold of somebody, you have to organise a calendar meeting, and the calendars will be absolutely slam full of, again, Zooms. And so CEO Andrew, in an update last week, he sort of put together a bunch of guidelines that he has, and if the invite doesn't have an agenda or information or whatever it might be, and there's a set of 7 principles, then you can just decline the meeting. And so there's a responsibility back on the people to make sure that they are actively thinking about, do I need to participate in that? Am I really going to contribute? Do I need to be in that meeting? And so we're encouraging people to have the self authority to challenge why do they need to be in a meeting, which I think creates a bit of a cultural change where in the office, if somebody puts the calendar in, you go and sit in the meeting room and turn up. So they're two important initiatives that seem small on the surface, but actually when you're in a house on the screen can make a huge difference.
Yeah, I totally align with that, and I think if I think about one of the most common words that happen in meetings now that didn't happen 6 months ago is the words, "Am I really needed here, or do you mind if I leave?" And that conscious cultural change about opting out of a situation that you're not required or you're not benefiting from, or the company's not benefiting from, has to be driven in there. And that's trust, that's behavior, and frankly, it's a bit of education in there as well. Is that option of like, do I really need to be here? And it does mean that managers have a much more engaging and important part to play in enabling that culture for their teams to say, no, not for me. I'm not adding value here. I'm out of here.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one, isn't it? I was reading a fab article on LinkedIn the other day, and they were talking about this kind of, stalking and pouncing on people that you used to do in the office, and, those kind of water cooler conversations that, were potentially work related, but also had that kind of lovely social element. And you just don't get any of that with our work days, just focus. And it is incredibly focused on work, which is great. I mean, our productivity, I think, has actually gone up in this period of time as opposed to anything else. And but I think it's good to take time out. And I know I do with my team, occasionally just have a meeting where we just talk about what we did at the weekend, or we show pictures of our kids, or, just talking about the human stuff, the stuff that you would normally do organically in an office. As well as progressing work. I think you have to be comfortable that people are committed, contributing, progressing work, and then as leaders, allow that more kind of human interaction to take place as well. And I also agree around if you don't need to be in a meeting and you're not adding value, or there's not a deliberate role to play, off you go, So yeah, trying to minimize the amount of WebExes I sit on is absolutely cool. Things like walking, we do dress Fridays or fancy Fridays, because every other day is a dress down day. So, we've tried to do all of those kinds of things as well to try and add a little bit more human element to it. But I think the biggest thing for me is kind of trying to generate energy, authentic energy. We do these kind of well-being check-ins at the beginning of a lot of the meetings, and the kind of 7 or 8 out of 10 is everybody's kind of stock answer now. And I think there's something okay with having a moan, and saying, actually, I'm alive today, and because this has happened and that's happened. And, I think it's important to allow people that space to share authentically how they're feeling and what their energy levels are at. Because you naturally see that through non-verbal cues in the office, but you wouldn't necessarily get that from a video interaction. So providing space for that, I think, is also important.
Yeah, and
absolutely.
I don't think you can, that will come to the fore, is the importance of that, Paula. Those natural hormones that kick in, the endorphins and the serotonin, and they are, because we're social animals, we respond to emotions, and a lot of that is cut. Looking on a digital platform, it's very important we work on these platforms, but without that human interaction piece, you've got to find it somewhere else.
Yeah, so true. Funnily enough, Paula, I actually do have regular coffee meetings in the calendar with the team just to pull them together. And it is specifically not to talk about work. That's one of the things that we have been doing. Talk about your weekend, talk about your kids, talk about your dog, but it's just that water cooler conversation, right? That's the bit that we're kind of missing out on so much at the moment. So I put that in the calendar for the team every second week. We just get together for half an hour, 45 minutes. And then the other tip, I think, in regards to carving out time for yourself is really important. The number of times I hear people say, oh, I haven't had lunch today. I haven't gone to the bathroom. You need to make sure that you block out, whether it's an hour or half an hour or 45 minutes or whatever time suits you, but you need to make sure that you have a little slice of your own time put into your calendar so that you can take a couple of minutes to just unplug and have a big deep breath before you go back into another session of back-to-back meetings. So that's a couple of things that I think we're doing at the moment to help in that space. All right, let me just quickly have a look here. Can panel give any tips on how to measure the success of your digital workplace strategy?
Oh, seeing Paula's face the entire time for this call. Sorry. From us, I think we see the success of our previous investment, because the connectivity of our people hasn't diminished at all. And if it's putting people together across diverse locations, previously we've got 9 offices across ANZ. Now we've got well over 2,000 offices, frankly, across ANZ.
We've been thinking about how we do work globally when we're in the office, and there's a set of measures that we use to think about the success of the software business around how fast can we get software out and what is our level of quality and some of those aspects. And those measures still apply when you're working remotely. So I think for us, understanding how easy the move was for effectively 2,000 people just to one day go and work from home, and without real preparation for that scenario, even though we'd spent time and effort putting the technology in place, that clearly was a measure of success. But seeing how our normal work measures are improving or aren't, I think they are still as relevant whether you're working from home or not. And so as long as we're improving those measures, then I think that reflects in the strategy that we have around our workplace and working together.
Thank you. It's interesting how our conversation has kind of bled into our third topic for today, which is work culture. And I recently heard someone say that culture is what you do when nobody's watching, and our actions speak on how we treat each other and how we collaborate each other, and more often challenging in a virtual workforce. This study has been around forever, but Engadget shows that 85% of communication is lost through the absence of body language. And so because you don't pick up the nonverbal cues appropriately. Having video makes a massive difference. Just being able to see the panelists today, to be able to interact, to see the smiles and the laughs, that helps so much. Paula, from an inclusion perspective, from a culture perspective, from a collaboration perspective, how are you finding supporting that virtual workforce?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, actually. And, I agree. I think, we talked earlier about kind of it being inclusive with people sitting around a table together, that, you're at home, you're getting access to people's home lives and seeing their families. And, so there's an inclusion piece that comes with that. I would also say, though, that I've been participating in meetings recently where video on is set out at the beginning of the meeting as an absolute must. And from an inclusion perspective, I also feel that that's a little bit polarizing, because you may be working in an environment where you are sharing a space with other people. You may not wish to kind of promote your home situation with your colleagues. So I think inclusivity should be about people showing up, wish to show up. And I think there's something around us allowing that natural adoption of these things. I think with your close colleagues, I think it's nice to be able to have that. I think, you know, to have your video on when you're first meeting people, again, I think that's important. But I do think, you know, forcing people or, you know, to do the things that maybe aren't as comfortable for them is also something we need to kind of consider. So yeah, it's an interesting one, but I think the biggest challenge for me around culture when you're working remotely is onboarding new joiners, you know, bringing new people into the organization. You learn so much from watching others, you know, whether it be observing how people operate within meetings, whether it's just observing how people interact with one another, those kind of things that, you know, you just naturally assimilate with, if that's the right word, you know, when you're kind of starting with a new organization, because of the environment that you're working within is lost. And we've been doing a piece of work at the moment looking at our onward digital strategy, and we've spoken to a few people who are either joining new teams or have recently joined the company, and how challenging that's been for them.
Mm-hmm.
I think moving forward, that's something that we're going to have to, you know, do more effectively. And I don't think it's just online training. I think there's learning from others, having access to good coaching, mentoring, and how you do that effectively through digital, I think will be a really interesting problem to solve for.
So true. We've had a couple of new starters join the team throughout this COVID period. And, you know, previously, our internal culture was we would all go for lunch, you know, on the first day and a couple of times in the first month. And, you know, you get to know them inside of work and outside of work, and you really start to build that rapport, right? So as you then turn around and ask for help inside, as you're getting up to speed, you feel a little bit more comfortable. But for these new starters that don't have that same access to that water cooler talk that we referenced before, it makes it really challenging.
And also asking the silly questions, right? I mean, you know,
Yeah.
No one likes to ask the silly questions when you're a new starter to a team, and doing it on a virtual platform is even more daunting. So, you know, how do you buddy someone up so they can ask those silly questions and navigate the organizations? It's a really interesting challenge.
We're looking to complete an acquisition of another business, and we had to go through the due diligence process completely through video, which was quite interesting. And now we're thinking about, well, how do we onboard a new company should the acquisition complete? We think about, well, how do you bring the cultures together, and how do you do an integration with you know, hundreds of people that you might not have met before, and make the culture an inclusive one. So there's definitely significant challenges there, and just onboarding an individual, definitely challenging. And I think in the office, it's easy to pair somebody up and you can sit next to them and ask the silly questions as you state. But I think there needs to be it's almost somebody's job to be the proactive buddy that can pair up with the new starter. Otherwise, you know, you can't just sit there and read material and ask questions. Somebody has to almost be guiding them as a part-time job, maybe. But it's definitely tough for new starters.
Yeah, I think when I think about, you know, the concept of this non-verbal cue, is one of the words that pop in my mind is anxiety, and it's a very negative word, but it's something we all should be cognizant of, in the fact that we are, as a culture, I'm talking a global culture here, we're much more anxious since COVID came into our lives, and we don't necessarily acknowledge that. And when our teams and our people are feeling anxious and we're not on a call, we don't even know it. Whereas in a physical workspace, you'd walk past somebody, you would pick up on those nonverbal cues. You would pick up on, and you would respond and be able to support them. So that support mechanism needs to be a conscious thing. And now suddenly we have to think about, well, could somebody be feeling out of sorts or anxious? Should I give them a ring just because? So I think it's that part of it needs to kind of be brought into all company cultures. I think also, although we did do it pre-COVID, the concept of saying a direct statement when you're physically present, you can do that and soften it by compassionate body language or whatever. You don't have that anymore if it's much more written or much more digital. So find a conversation that happens today that does not have an emoji or a GIF attached, and I'll be shocked. And that's because we are conscious that, I've got to say something, but I've got to actually soften it or try and explain the context or the emotions that I'm saying it with. So I think we are learning how to cope in this new world. And I think that will be part of it forever.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, Graeme. Let's have a quick look at the polls and let's see if we can get some thoughts on that. So first question, it's actually pretty evenly split. Is your organization investing in technology, stand-up desks, extra monitors, noise canceling headsets, etc., to provide a better home office experience? And interestingly, 38% said yes. Are you guys seeing that those are the types of things, maybe not necessarily organizations, but speaking with friends and colleagues?
Yeah, definitely. And we've just done a future ways of working survey within our organisation, and most people have got a monitor. That's the one thing that I think that most people feel they can't live without. Monitor and share seem to be the things that most people desire. We did a call this morning, and I think 50% of us put our hands up that we're having some form of back problem or what. So yeah, and I think we're offering it that people can have access. We're using our supplier network to make sure that people can access the right tools as they need to facilitate the right setup for them. We're not kind of forcing that downstream and stipulating.
And we, as a similar, what we have done is, rather than stipulate what people get as a product, whether it's a chair, whether it's a screen or whatever, we kind of set the intent of what an ergonomic workstation or productive workstation looks like, but we can't presume what people have already, especially being I hope they don't mind me saying it, but a huge part of our population or our team are digital geeks. They've probably got better stuff at home than we'll ever have in an office. So we've got to be aware of that. So what we've done is we've done a financial contribution, and that financial contribution is up to that individual to determine what will enable it. But our expectation is that there'll be more set up at home and they can apply it to where they need it.
Yeah, one of my colleagues has just put in one of those stand-up desks, so that way when he's working from home, he has the ability to at least not be sitting all day, which is, I think, probably a good thing for your back, your neck, your body, your well-being. And I know that wasn't overly expensive, but yeah, it's changed kind of his outlook on a day-to-day basis, which is really good. I'm just conscious of time. I know that there was one or two other questions in the poll, which we will try to answer after this session. But in terms of closing and wrapping up, I'd like to thank all three of our panelists, Paula, Andrew, Graeme. Thank you for sharing your insights, giving us some new points for consideration. I'd also like to thank the audience for joining us today and for participating in the polls. Gives us extra insight to share inside and outside of our organization, so thank you. Polly has recently issued a new report, Hybrid Working, Creating the Next Normal in Workplace Practices, Spaces, and Culture. So we'll be sharing that with each of you as well via email after this session. It draws on insights from experts in the future of the workplace design and psychology. So please keep an eye out. Wonderful conversation. Thank you again to everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jason.
Thanks very much.
Cheers, guys.
Have a good day.
You too.
Bye-bye.